one voice of conscience, we go to the other voice of conscience. We have with us Dr. Samuel Raj, who has stuck to his conscience and taken on the system where he was working. And I think the country and the systems require more voices of conscience, voices of dissent, whistleblowers, whatever we call it. Because somewhere I don't see that happening in our country.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
Good morning, and it's my privilege to talk to the intellectuals from various fields, and it's nice to see everybody in the same place. It's my privilege. I'm working in a pharma industry, Daiichi Sankyo, formerly it was known as Ranbaxy. So the problem is not only with the academics or in the government side, even the private side also it is even more. Private side, most of the time, you don't have any freedom to work on what the management decides that you have to do that work. So, and it is explained to us even in the beginning also, but at the interest of our nation, everybody has a conscience that we need to work on that goal. And the pharma industry is mainly, you talk about GSK or Pfizer or any other company, they don't work on the disease which is called as neglected diseases. And nowadays many major pharma, they are closing down their infectious diseases unit. That's what I was talking about yesterday. We are moving towards the pre-antibiotic era. In 2005 and 2006, you may remember that there was a meningitis outbreak in Delhi. And our team has reported there is a ciprofloxacin resistance, and then it is not good for our country. Many people were very happily taking the ciprofloxacin. There was one incident. There is one person came from US to attend the wedding, but he could not return back because he was stuck with the brain fever, which is meningitis. And our team has reported that we found that this meningitis was becoming resistant to ciprofloxacin, and the people or the relatives of the cases were happily taking it, but they didn't know that it was not effective. It was, it is used as a prophylactic treatment. And finally, we wanted to report, but there was so much of pressure from the management. And the question before me was that one: am I going to side with the company, or am I going to stand with the interest of the nation? And finally, I stood with the interest of the nation, and we have published in the Journal of Infectious Diseases, which is published by Center for Disease Control in USA, and that has got a very big impact. And the WHO also even advised the doctors not to use the ciprofloxacin as a prophylactic treatment. Now, my question to the company is that why don't we work something, in the interest of our nation, for example, tuberculosis. And I was telling yesterday that tuberculosis from multi-drug resistance, extensive drug resistance, now it has gone to the complete drug resistance. And another project that I am taking is that, Kala, which is mainly in Bihar and West Bengal, Jharkhand and other few states. And most of the time I got the answer from our management is that, Daiichi Sankyo, the Japanese company is not interested. But I was telling them again and again, why don't you convince them? We have to do something for our nation. So don't give the example of what GSK does or what the Pfizer does. At least what we are doing that is more important. We are in India. If Daiichi Sankyo or any other company, they want to have business in India, they should do some work in our country. But I don't think so I will be able to convince our company, and simultaneously start doing some other work related, I got in touch with a professor from London School of Medicine and Hygiene, as well as from University of Glasgow, and also University of Illinois at Chicago for various projects. Number one project is, to discover a new drug against Kala-Azar. We have a meeting tomorrow night. The first meeting is going to take place. A professor from London School of Medicine and University of Glasgow, they are coming over here. And I could gather a few more scientists from India. They are also meeting tomorrow night at 7:30. So I had to be there at 7:30. The second project is for tuberculosis. This project will be in collaboration with University of Illinois as well as Harvard Medical Institute. That meeting will be taking place in February. In this result, in this effort, I may be out of Daiichi Sankyo, but I will not be out of this goal. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Raj. So another voice of conscience, and not just a voice of conscience who grows with us, but he's also coming up with his own innovations. That's brilliant. But somehow across the world, I see a kind of a conspiracy happening. And there's this movie which released last year called, I think it was this year, The Whistleblower. How many of you have seen The Whistleblower? It's an English movie made in Hollywood, right? It's based on the true life story of a young police officer who was from the New York police force, and she joined the UN system to go and work in a country where they wanted to bring in law and order. And then she saw that the entire police force over there was actually kind of exploiting the women in that country. And she blew the whistle. And for the past 15 or 16 years, she's never got a job again in an NGO or the UN system, right? And the UN actually tried to stop the release of this movie. When the movie was being publicized, they tried to stop the release of the movie, but Hollywood went ahead and produced the movie and they released the movie. Now the movie created a lot of questions and a lot of minds as to what's happening in the UN system. In fact, there's a site called the UN Insider, and if you go onto the UN Insider, you'll read a lot of stories about what's really happening in the UN system, how people exploit people. In fact, the UNICEF director called Cecilia Ardona, who was accused of sexual harassment by a woman working with him over here, was thrown out of the country and no action was taken against him. So all the stories are there. But my point, and I just provoke a simple thought process. The whistleblower or the voice of conscience gets marginalized. Everybody goes against the person because you're one in those thousands, because your conscience is huge. But those people continue working in the system. And caught people, for example, a Shashi Tharoor, who's been caught trying to fix a key, who's been caught, almost with his pants down, sorry to use that terminology, trying to fix a key, use of crores of rupees, and God knows who he was working for, gets brought into the system again, and that's the reason I said yesterday, who's the Ministry of HR? I don't want to know. As the Ministry of HR, what kind of values will this education system have with a minister like Shashi Tharoor at the helm of affairs there? Any answers to that? I open it up to the audience. No answers? Can we have the microphone over there, please? I'm opening up the floor because I'm trying to find some answers to this, because I see everybody telling me that Shashi Tharoor is such an artful, brilliant man. Good, let's have some more book reading sessions, but not in that office. That's a public office that belongs to the public of India.
Different field, even the local politicians also involved in that one. Many times some of the duplicate medicines are owned by those small companies are owned by the local politicians or the rich people, those who are nexus with this one. So that's totally a different area, and then that has to be tackled in different way.
There's also a big market out there.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a company called Low Cost Medicine, which actually kind of produces generic medicine. Nobody knows about them because nobody kind of talks about them. But there is a lot of synergy happening out there, amongst ethical medicine companies. So thank you, Dr. Raj. We can catch up with Dr. Raj over lunch and fellowship. Yeah. From
Thank you very much.
another voice of conscience, we'll now move on to some innovators. Big hand for Dr. Raj. Random entrepreneurship. Yeah. Friend and old associate used to do the Bangalore Marathon together. Neeraj Verma, may we have you up on stage, please? The random entrepreneur. Became an entrepreneur very early in life. When I was still in college, I started organizing exhibitions in Punjab. I used to live in Delhi at that time. And it's been about 20 years since I started working, and I've primarily been in the space of events. I've had short stints in corporate India. I've worked for MNCs, I've worked for some of the big names in industry. It took me a while to kind of figure out that events is what I like to do. It took me a while to figure out that I have the skill sets to organize events. And then once I kind of figured that out, I started the first company, my company called Crossroads Sports, which organized marathons in Bangalore. That's the time since when I know Jerry. At that point, the marathon was just an event. We didn't really know why we were doing it. It was just a good idea to have a marathon. But once we kind of got involved with it, we kind of figured out that charities play a big role I mean, that's really the sense of conducting a marathon. And we associated with iCONGO, and since then, I've done about 7 odd marathons in Bangalore. I innovated, I created the first midnight marathon in the world. So Bangalore has a midnight marathon which has been going on for the last 7 years. We actually run at 12 o'clock at night. At some point in my career as an event manager, once I kind of done a few international events, the question came up to me that what's the point? I mean, am I making a difference? What next? And I reinvented myself that I want to be somebody who wants to make a difference. Right? And I went to the space of employee engagement, and now I'm also working in the space of public engagement. My skill sets basically are entrepreneurship, the ability to design and create events which get people out, get them to interact with each other. And about 3 months back, I reinvented myself as the random entrepreneur. And who the random entrepreneur is somebody who's actually, for me, what I wanted to do was to break away from the 9-to-5 schedule, be able to work at my own pace, be able to work when I wanted to work, how I wanted to work, and with whom I wanted to work. Be able to choose the ideas that I want to work with. So for me, the random entrepreneur was about travel. I actually have a 1971 model entry, which I'm going to be traveling on. I intend to travel from city to city, village to village, and see where is it that I can make a difference, using the skill sets that I have. So for me, it was about making a difference. It was about being able to work at my own pace, being able to work in projects that excite me. So the intention is to set up events across cities, which help raise funds to charity, or communicate the causes that I support. Okay, so that's what the random entrepreneur is about. Hopefully by the end of the year, I intend to do a project report on this, and probably get a lot more people across the country motivated to take this way of living and making a difference. Thank you very much. Okay, I intend to go and interact and network with either NGOs or other bodies like, say, a Rotary or a Round Table or a Lions Club, and sit down with them and kind of really try and understand what is it that we can do. Right? So marathons is one of the things that we can do. Festivals which kind of get the community to really come out and do something together is another thing that I intend to do. But if you ask me, is there a plan for it? No, there's no plan. It's random. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Neeraj.
Already introduced me, I'm Sneha Bhandari, and I live in Goa. I'm an architect and with a master's in urban design from Ahmedabad. Well, that's about my qualification, and what I do is a lot of things, so I really will tell you a few things that I do. Is I'm director at Nirvana T-shirts, and we were speaking yesterday about Indianness and how to be more Indian. And this is a small little thing I'll tell you why we started Nirvana. If everybody knows, in 1998 we had the Pokhran and we had the West shouting sanctions against India. So it was just a news item for some people, and for some people it was angst, it was disgust. And for Raj and me, it was, we've got to do something about this, But what is it that we can do? So Raj immediately, same morning, as he was dressing up, he's like, oh my God, I've got these Nikes and Reeboks, and I've got a whole lot of foreign junk in my wardrobe, and why am I patronizing the US and the European brands when they are putting sanctions against my country? I'd rather buy something Indian, So after that, and henceforth, if you come to my home, you will only see Indian products, whether it's a TV or a refrigerator. As far as possible, we like to give business to only Indian companies and try to promote them. And I think if all of us do it, even if the West can do whatever they want with sanctions, it's not going to affect us in any which way. So that's how we started our hunt for clothes, good Indian clothes, and jeans and formals, casuals we found, but t-shirts in the year 1998, 99, there wasn't a single brand which we could relate to and say, oh well, I would like to patronize this brand. So Raj, being an artist, thought, well, let me create something. In the college, he used to be painting on plain t-shirts on friends just as a hobby. So I was like, but we don't know anything about the business, so we said we learn. So we went to Tirupur, Ludhiana, we went to Gujarat, and we tried to figure out. And fortunately, we met this guy, and we stuck up with him a deal, and it was a sick unit, and we started manufacturing under the brand name Nirvana. We immediately got it registered. We immediately decided it's going to be a private limited company, because as of now it's our passion, because our mainline business was, his family business was into logistics and machinery. So we said, okay, someday this brand is going to grow big. We will grow big when our time comes, but as of now, we are definitely starting this brand, and we started promoting it as a Swadeshi brand, an Indian brand, proud to be Indian basically, and we had a lot of India prints on it, and believe me, it was a hit, because Goa is a place where tourists come and people come, and not just the Indians, even the foreigners were buying a lot of India things in it, and that's why we got the confidence and said, yes, it's a damn good quality, and it's got original Indian art on it, Indian art as an artist art on it. So this is how it started. And now I got selected this year for Goldman Sachs program, and I won the Best Businessman Award. And that's where now Goldman Sachs is an American company. They have sponsored all over the world 10,000 Women Entrepreneurship Scheme. So the Confederation of, through the Chamber of Commerce, I got this opportunity. So I took this program, and then I said, okay, the West has been selling to us. Now it's time for me to go and sell India to the West. And to take that one step forward, when I got this opportunity to go to Germany through the Confederation of Indian Industry, to be a part of a delegation to help promote Indo-German trade, I took it up, and in the interview I told them very clearly, why are you going there? I said, I'm not going to buy anything from Germany, I'm going to sell to Germany. So, and I was thinking they are going to not select me anymore, because what they want is people to buy from Germany. But as luck would have it, I got selected, and I think soon I will be selling it there. And another point which came forward, from yesterday's discussion is when somebody's asked a question, okay, we have an idea, but we don't have the funding. This is a case in point, like, I didn't even have a lot of money when I started Nirvana, as in I didn't know how much it would cost. But you've got to have the faith and conviction, and you've got to do things hands-on. Don't have an idea and expect somebody else to implement it for you. You've got to do it yourself. Today I've gone e-commerce. I know nothing about, I'm technology, challenged in a way. I don't understand the technology that well. But as I come here, I'm coming from a course in Bombay, because if it's my business, I got to know it. I got to know, I got to dirty my hands, whether it's social entrepreneurship, whether it's your own business, whatever it may be. So you've got to dirty your own hands before, or you can get people to work for you and do it for you. So,
Thank you, sir.
Reverse trade with what you started. But I have a simple query that as you are talking about the sanctions against the country. Sanctions, these countries are so smart, they never put any sanctions which is for the common public, which can be reproduced in that country. Sanctions are against only those items where those countries monopolize and that cannot be produced in that country. Here I have disagreement with that.
Pardon me?
Yeah, this is regarding the, I conclave you on the reverse case, that's fine. But second thing as you talked about, that your initiative was due to the sanction against India due to that nuclear explosion. What is my understanding, that as such I am not an expert on trade, but my understanding is that these sanctions are never put against the items which are for mass public, because from there these countries get benefits. They always want to do business. They put the sanctions against those items in which they have the monopoly, and second, those items cannot be produced easily by that country. That is my...
Yeah, I agree to what you're saying, but the point here is not the sanction. See, it's an idea. What I'm trying to say is anything can give birth and generate an idea. So at that point of time, when the headline screams sanctions against India, whatever it may have been meaning in whatever context, it was an assault to our senses. Why reaction where you don't use your mind, but it's your emotion which reacts, and then you say, oh, I got to do something. So I'm not getting into the technical aspects of it. I'm just talking of it as an emotional outburst that I have to do something for my country. And I would encourage everybody, please buy only Indian products. That's the only way we can sustain Indian economy.
Austerity drive measures today. But I think the sentiment is huge, and if we talk about Indian companies and having Indian products, we'll never know what kind of FDI they have. So it's a catch-22. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Sneha? Thank you, Sneha.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, Jerry, for bringing me here. It's a privilege and an honor to be among so many wonderful, hardworking, well-intentioned souls. My name is Mandira. I work as a facilitator myself and for others for self-empowerment and healing. It's a vast subject, but I'd like to just say that all of us, especially those of us who are fighting, working for change, need to know how to take care of ourselves. Men and women alike, in different ways, in different areas, must learn to first take care of themselves and then be able to take care of much more. Very much like what we told on the flights to here and everywhere, that first get the oxygen for yourself and then help others. I've worked with women a lot in the last 10 years for changes at a mental, emotional, physical level. I think for us to be able to change for the universe, the world, our country, our society, we need to change primarily our belief system. And each one of us needs to look at ourselves, first of all. Clean up our beliefs in so many different aspects and areas of life. Go on to learn about emotional awareness, how to best handle our emotions so that we don't keep on sending out negative stuff even into the earth, into our environment. And physically to look after ourselves. And then to be able to transcend to a different level of being. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandira.
Awakening Dance Within is about removing those many layers of conditioned ways, beliefs, thinking patterns, behaviors to reach a more essential space within ourselves, to be in touch with who we essentially are and what our individual calling may be in this particular lifetime, and then to move on to fulfill that if possible. I work with different methods for all of this. I work with transactional analysis. I work with a dance form, which is, I put it together, a module which I call a dance meditation, which allows for movement, especially in the area of the hara, which is the second chakra, where our conditioning is understood to be deeply embedded. So that's basically what I can explain in 1 minute, Jerry. I don't know if it makes sense.
Thank you so much. So that's a spiritual entrepreneur for us. She's one of our ex-KARMAVEER global fellows. She's working with a lot of people in Goa and across. I think the work she does has a lot of synergies with what Naireen Daruwala presented in the morning, gender justice. Fundamental duty number 5 in the Indian Constitution talks about renouncing practices derogatory to women. Nobody follows it, I think. So I think it's time to, yes, that kind of provoke something.
Yeah. Well, yeah, about rights. for women. I like to work a lot with women about the duties of women towards themselves. This has been my own journey in my life, for a woman to understand that for her to be the giver in almost every role that she adopts in life, she has to take care of herself and not look to others or to her man or men to do that. And I do believe that if women learn to do that, we will have better men.
Thank you. So, thank you, Mandira.
I want to say one more thing.
Yes, sure.
What you just mentioned, Anita, about the victim within, which of course exists in men and women. But as women, since we're talking about women's rights and issues, I think it is universally so deeply ingrained in women about being the weaker lot. And that's why I said that the belief system has to be very thoroughly attacked to really make those changes where women will then not even attract the violence that they do, because they will not allow themselves to be in such situations. I think that's the root of a lot of duties and rights.
Thank you, Mandira. Thank you so much.
I'm part of an organization by name Advait Foundation, which I initiated in 2004. And this was with a passion for environment and with a strong belief that we cannot improve environment unless it affects one's own life, which is true both in cases of urban or rural or industry. While we are all here, the whole aspect of being conscious, we still see people driving away in big cars, and soon pops out a small piece of paper from the window on the road. It's just because we are not conscious. We all want to live in a clean environment. We all keep saying, well, we are still a developing country, our government does not do this, it's all unclean. But then it's a lot onto us. And as an organization, we've just been striving to work with people to be conscious. We can reduce our consumption at home vis-a-vis our output from our homes as waste will reduce. And sometimes we feel that each one of us wants to do it, but we don't know how to do it. And to answer those questions of residents, of industries, we started a center, information center in Gurgaon. This is located in Sector 29. And it's an environment information center where, be it large things like setting up water harvesting systems in your houses or industries, we give you information of viability free of cost. We want people to set it up, but first understand, is it viable or is it not viable? And then spend money to set it up. I have a whole lot of kitchen waste. How can I reduce my kitchen waste? Today we still see a whole lot of us who do things because we can afford it and not because we need them. We all follow the government's no to plastics. And I believe it is only the plastic industry which has not done their work. Our mobile phones are plastic, our computers are plastics, and still, and the kind of bags which the shopkeepers are given also has a plastic polymer in it. And we are all going ahead taking paper bags or whatever, and fine, our own bags, cloth bags are perfectly fine, but this whole fact about no to plastic makes me believe that it is a politically driven process. It is far more energy efficient to use plastics. Children cannot carry glass water bottles or tiffins. It ought to be plastic. It is much lighter. And that is where we come in with a belief that we need more environment information centers. There is less awareness among all of us as individuals, as industrialists, as institutions. on our duty towards environment. I initiated in 2004, and this was with a passion for environment and with a strong belief that we cannot improve environment unless it affects one's own life, which is true both in cases of urban or rural or industry. While we are all here, the whole aspect of being conscious, we still see people driving away in big cars, and soon pops out a small piece of paper from the window on the road. It's just because we are not conscious. We all want to live in a clean environment. We all keep saying, well, we are still a developing country, our government does not do this, it's all unclean. But then it's a lot onto us. And as an organization, we've just been striving to work with people to be conscious. We can reduce our consumption at home vis-a-vis our output from our homes as waste will reduce. And sometimes we feel that each one of us wants to do it, but we don't know how to do it. And to answer those questions of residents, of industries, we started a center, information center in Gurgaon. This is located in Sector 29. And it's an environment information center where, be it large things like setting up water harvesting systems in your houses or industries, we give you information of viability free of cost. We want people to set it up, but first understand, is it viable or is it not viable? And then spend money to set it up. I have a whole lot of kitchen waste. How can I reduce my kitchen waste? Today we still see a whole lot of us who do things because we can afford it and not because we need them. We all follow the government's no to plastics. And I believe it is only the plastic industry which has not done their work. Our mobile phones are plastic, our computers are plastics, and still, and the kind of bags which the shopkeepers are given also has a plastic polymer in it. And we are all going ahead taking paper bags of whatever, and fine, our own bags, cloth bags are perfectly fine, but this whole fact about no to plastic makes me believe that it is a politically driven process. It is far more energy efficient to use plastics. Children cannot carry glass water bottles or tiffins. It ought to be plastic. It is much lighter. And that is where we come in with the belief that we need more environment information centers. There is less awareness among all of us as individuals, as industrialists, as institutions on our duty towards environment. That is all what I have to say, Jerry.
Thank you, Charu. Brilliant insights. So, any questions for Charu, please? Another of our ex-KARMAVEER Global Fellows. Any questions that you want to pose to Charu? Please do go to a center in Gurgaon, and they're doing some amazing work, creating awareness, I think, which is lacking in this country because most people are not aware, not only socially or politically, but not aware of a lot of things. Yeah. And I agree with what she said, there's not enough for everyone's greed, but there is enough for everyone's need.
In fact, what a beautiful thing has happened out of that center is the government has taken it up and they are coming to us and says, why don't you set up such a center in every state? And helping us do a hand-holding with each of the state governments.
Thank you, Charu.
Thanks.
Brilliant.
Thanks.
So, thank you. Big hand for Charu, please.
The thing has happened out of that center is the government has taken it up and they are coming to us and says, why don't you set up such a center in every state? And helping us do a hand-holding with each of the state governments.
Thank you, Charu. Brilliant. So, thank you. Big hand for Charu, please.
We believe the greatest KARMAVEER present here is a person called Jerry Almeida. More strength to your elbow, and may Jerry Almeida and iCONGO go from strength to strength. We started the Rex conclave by taking a pledge to the Constitution. Starting with the Constitution of India conferred sovereignty on we the people. And we the people, over the last 6 decades, abdicated that sovereignty and allowed it to pass into the hands of people who should be nowhere near the hallowed precincts of the parliament. The time has come now for we the people to resume our sovereignty. The rest of my talk is from my recent book that came out, Revitalizing Indian Democracy. It was released, amongst others, by Justice J.S. Verma and Dr. Qureshi. I've been meeting with many constitutional experts. Let me tell you that I started the Movement for Restoration of Good Government, MRGG, 17 years ago, just after retirement. So because of that, I've been meeting with a lot of constitutional experts in India, very eminent. And today I find that the commonly held belief is that our constitution needs to be replaced with a fresh constitution because it's based on the 1935 India Act, and the time has come to replace it. I disagree with that. The main reason is the founding fathers of India's constitution, each one of them, giants among men, men with great intellect, learning, scholarship. They were respected throughout the country. They were men who were respected in the world. So who's going to be framing the new Constitution of India? Do you see those men anywhere near the power centers or in the political spectrum? That's the first point I want to make. Secondly, I think this is an excellent constitution. When I go abroad to give talks, other people are quoting from it. It is because the people whom we've allowed to be our legislators are men of straw. So again, the fault lies with us and not merely with the parliamentarians whom we keep on condemning. I'm going to touch on a few bullet points, and later on we can discuss it. Today, India is imperiled as never before. The threats to India are more from what's happening internally in the country than external threats. And if we don't do something about it now, not later, this month, next year in the 2014 elections, we might go into a tailspin. Today, decisions are being taken by the government of India that are not in the interest of the people of India. The government of India is being controlled by foreign interests. I've made this point in various forums. And let me tell you why. There's a PIL in the Supreme Court filed on behalf of Akshara Theatre. I was one of the discussants there. Professor Dr. Subhash Kashyap and a lot of other people who filed it. And the Supreme Court, in their wisdom, gave a judgment that a judge of the Supreme Court would investigate all the top people in the country who have siphoned off India's wealth outside. The figure, whatever government may say, is way beyond $1.5 trillion. China's foreign reserves today have exceeded $3 trillion. Our reserves are hovering around $300 billion. By all rights, they should be also around $2 trillion. Now what? Your CBI and investigative agency either don't know or will not do anything about it is known to all the foreign governments, especially in the West. I was several years in the West, looking after France, Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, also overseeing Spain and Portugal. In the process, I met the intelligence services of all these countries and a few others, including some of the heads. They are using that information to manipulate the people who are running this country. And that explains to you why decisions are being made that are not in the country's interests. They are blackmailing these people. It's the same thing that's happening on the subcontinent, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, elsewhere also. There's a PIL before the Supreme Court, and all what I'm telling you, it's in my book. I've presented it in writing to every Chief Justice. That's the first point I want to make. The second point I want to make is that over the years, body blows are being delivered to the Constitution and democracy. In the last 2-3 years, I gave 3 important talks to an international audience at the India International Center. The first was Reconciling Coalition Dharma, Good Governance and National Security. It was converted into an occasional paper by India International Center trustees. The second was, more important, is the Constitution being constitutionally undermined? And that is why you find outrageous decisions being implemented and you can't even prosecute these people. And the third was judicial activism, panacea, boon or bane. And so next point I come to now is the judiciary. The judiciary has helped to preserve the Constitution of India. We are lucky. Several decisions of the Supreme Court where the judiciary has intervened have saved democracy. But what is happening now is the political class railing against the judiciary for judicial activism. What is more, the political class, the leaders who should be making decisions, are having their cake and eating it too. Certain decisions which are absolutely essential for you and me, for the people of India, that must be taken, are deliberately not being taken by the political class, by the government at the center and the chief ministers. They know that these are critical issues on which decisions have to be taken. So they wait for the public who is obliged to go to the courts with the PIL, and evidently the courts will rule in favor of the PIL. So therefore, the government and the state governments, knowing that this has to be done, as I said, are having their cake and eating it too. They blame the judiciary, and therefore certain segments who are the political vote bank are pleased also. The next biggest danger that is now confronting democracy in India, another body blow, is what I have termed in my book the advent of dynastic warlordism. It has been institutionalized at the center and is spreading in concentric circles to the states. Dynastic warlordism also entails that starting from the center, the agencies that protect we the people of India on national security have been thoroughly emasculated. Flowing from that in concentric circles, state chief ministers are doing the same thing. Recently, I gave a talk to about 160 police officers in Raipur in Chhattisgarh. Stop me whenever, because this can continue indefinitely. And I said, criminals are becoming ministers. One of the inspectors general of police got up. He says, General, you're wrong. I said, what do you mean I'm wrong? I can give you examples. He says, that is old hat. He says in UP, for example, he was from UP, the legislator, he is no longer interested in becoming a minister. He wants to control the SHO and all the thanas in his constituency so that he, his friends and family can rape, loot, murder, do what they like. No FIR is allowed to be filed. What is worse? FIRs are filed against the adversaries. This is the state of law and order for the common man. Here, in my book, while praising the judiciary, I have also railed against the judiciary. I said, you stop lamenting that things are going wrong. Why are you whining? You're the Supreme Court, the ultimate authority. Why don't you put a stop to some of these things? There's defiance against the Supreme Court directive for reform of the police. How many years have gone? Not a single state or the center has followed it either in spirit or on the ground. Why are they lamenting? Law and order for the common man in the states especially, where events are not highlighted, crimes are not highlighted, is at an end. It is police Raj, it is mafia Raj. In fact, I think the days of Thuggy are back upon us. And there is no British colonel to eradicate for us. We the people have to now resume our sovereignty. Thank you very much, Jerry.
Thank you so much, Mr. And happy with the campaign work because Alibaba and the 40 thieves who were in public office were ousted from office. Armando, with whom we actually led the campaign to go up giving the people initiative for more vibrant democracy. Yeah, so I've shared that with you. Any questions?
No, before the questions, since you've spoken about Goa, Jerry, this is very important. If I had time, I would have spoken about Goa. People, when they come out to vote, that's what we've been telling. 83% turnout, it always is a vote for the better. I've been invited in the last 2 years by the International Center Goa, by the Chambers of Commerce. First head was, when I went first time, was Mr. Menezes. Now it's Mr. Mangirish. Pai Riker, the University Goa and International Center Goa. And after some of my talks when the book was released, Mr. Mangirish, the head of the Chambers of Commerce, he said, we participated. I said, we the people? He said, no, we the Chambers of Commerce. I said, what did you do? He said, I know Goa is a small state, but all the people in the Chambers of Commerce, we also went around, just as political parties do, or legislators do, give talks. We went around to each of the constituencies day and night. And we told the people 2 things. We didn't favor any party, not the BJP, not the Congress or any party. We just told them, please come out and vote for the best person. Be discriminative.
Thank you. Thank you, General Secretary. You may take this microphone and take center stage. We open the floor to questions. Any questions for General Secretary? Yes, may we have the microphone for Armando? Very difficult to get him to speak, so I'm happy that he's volunteered. Armando speaks. Yugal Rayadu, I see you in the audience. We are waiting for a folk song for you in the morning.
I'm Armando Gonzalez from Goa. Jerry and I are on the same board of trustees at a trust known as Goa for Giving. We led a campaign in Goa in 2011 against corruption. Additionally, I want to let people know here that in 1967, the only referendum in free India was held in Goa. That's the opinion poll of Goa in 1967. Can Goa be the answer for the problems that India is facing today? Can Goa be the place where we can bring about political and social change? The question of the general.
This is the first thing I told, not only Mr. Mangirish Raikar, Yatin Kakodkar, a lot of others came for my talk. The Chief Secretary at that time, I think he may have come to the center. There was an IG of police after the first talk. She was a lady. But now, it's a question, I couldn't meet the Chief Minister. All the scripts of my talk have been sent to him. My book, 5 copies of the book were sent to him. He says, tell General Sehgal, contact me after September. September is past, I haven't gone to Goa after that. He says, first 6 months, I want to get a hold of Goa. And then we'll go ahead. So I spoke to Mr. Raikar. I said, up to November aa gaya, December aa gaya. The wrong things are not taking place. I said, but where are the systemic changes that should be coming about? I said, these are not being enacted. There is no systemic change that has taken place. And you know what the difficulty is? Please, this is here, Chatham House rules. Everything said is in confidence because what was said to me was in confidence. It happened in Uttarakhand. General B.C. Khanduri was a very tough chief minister. He was removed from power not by the opposition. I keep going to Uttarakhand very often, once in 3-4 months. I'm going again in December. It is the BJP legislators. They said he stopped us from doing what we've been doing. And of course, they were routed. This time, 3 months before the elections, he was called again. He almost turned the tide, a bit too late. Back to Goa. I'm given to understand the grapevine because, as I said, I get a feedback even from Goa University. Why the systemic change is not taking place is because the legislators who've been elected, they can't go about it the way they were used to. And if the chief minister really does what General Khanduri did, there might be a revolt. That's what our democracy has come down to. I'm sorry.
Thank you, General Secretary. And just to add to that, I think to start with, I firmly believe that Goa can become the microcosm. It's a very small state. It doesn't take too much money to experiment. We led a campaign with just less than 2 lakhs of rupees, I think. Yeah? And in 2 weeks, the public turned around and ousted all the wrong elements, which is mostly comprising of murderers, rapists, thieves, and scoundrels. Yeah? And the campaign was very blatant. We were speaking to the people that don't lose faith. It's not that you don't have good people that you can elect. And that's where we actually kind of partnered with one doctor who was a dentist and a priest who left the church and said he's going to kind of contest elections. So the people got faith that there are good people who can contest elections also. And I think that kind of showed in the state elections which happened because a good man has come back into the chief minister's position. He's a IIT graduate, has done away with all security. And I'll tell you more about it in the evening. I'll probably show you the campaign. The campaign was very simple. It says reclaim people power, don't get swayed by thugs who are offering you booze, biryani, refrigerators, televisions. Very blatant, very in-the-face campaign. And the reason I say Goa can become the microcosm is there's no other place which is as small. There are probably places in the northeast, but conflict in the northeast is huge. Goa is more contained. There is still some kind of semblance of humanity over there. I say semblance of humanity because it's really not there. Being a Goan, I'm saying that, so don't hold me against it. But most people need to be aware because most citizens of Goa end up voting for the criminal elements because very myopic thought process. But that needs to be overcome.
Back to Armando, in fact, your environment movement, which stopped certain projects and saved Goa, that is being quoted by us all over, not only in India, around the world. Goa is a model. Let's hope that the new Chief Minister has the backing to make sure systemic changes are brought about so that there's an element of irreversibility. You can't go back to the same old ways.
Yes. We'll take one more question. Who has a question? Mr. Bangya, you had quite a lot of opportunities. Let's have somebody else. Yugal Gayal. Let's have, so sorry, Professor Raidu. Yeah, okay. You have the microphone with you? Let's have the microphone for Professor Raidu, please. Sorry?
Yeah, General Saigal was really glad to know about your unflinching belief in the Constitution of India. And I'm happy to know that you say that there is no need to change the Constitution of India. Sir, there is a very important element. One of the important support of the Constitution, dimension of the Constitution, in the preamble.
I think the majority of people in India are secular because we are basing it on religious divides. Somebody from Pakistan, actually, one of my earlier books had come out, this is the 6th book, and he was very, very upset. He says, we didn't know it happens in India also. And this was about what had happened in Gujarat many, many years ago. I had the courage to tell him, I said, wait and watch. Immediately after Gujarat were the elections in Himachal Pradesh. Himachal Pradesh has over 98% Hindu population. They were so upset and pained by what took place in Gujarat that they brought Congress back to power. It's again we the people who have to practice secularism and not leave it to the leaders because the leaders are vying with each other, talking about secularism, but actually all their policies are breaking secularism.
So divisive politics is the weapon for the BJP, for the left, and for the Congress. So none of them are secular. But the people have to become secular. People are not secular also, I'm sorry. But I don't see a sentiment of India anywhere in the country. It's all a sentiment of region, state, religion. And like I always say, that we are probably the only country which has honorable killings and dishonorable honor killings. So thank you so much. Professor Pillai, last question from Professor Pillai. May we have the microphone for Professor Pillai, please?
Colleges, universities, amongst others, town halls. The young people today, they are full of idealism. They cherish all the values that Jerry and all of you have been talking about. They want to change India for the better. They have a problem. Just last month, one of the educational institutions in Delhi, one of the principals is in Gurgaon, she bought 13 or 14 copies of my book when it came out. I had gone to meet her with a suggestion about something else, and while I was sitting with her, somebody barged in. It turned out she was a teacher who's an army officer's wife. So the principal got annoyed, and I also frowned. She says, sorry, Madam, we have to take away General Sehgal for 25 minutes. She was insistent. She told the principal that one of the books revitalizing Indian democracy, we gave it to our 12th class students, and political science who are learning. So they've gathered together about 20 of them, and they want to talk about the book. They've got questions for General Sehgal. I won't go into details, time is running short. Those students, boys and girls, asked me questions that were so incisive. All over India, when I go and give talks, I've had answers. To those questions, I did not have satisfactory answers. I realized they are more aware than us. And in the end, what hit me in the solar plexus was, the parting comment was, "Sir, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for your book. Nothing is going to change." I said, "You are young. For me, in this world, I'm 74, going to be 74, another 10 years, 15 years, 5 years. यार आपके सामने तो अभी 80 साल बाकी हैं, 100 years wait. Why are you disillusioned?" She says, "Of course we'll go out and vote. But what is the choice you are giving us? So you take it, whether it's the BJP at the center or the Congress, the same number of criminals will be given tickets. Every year it's on the increase. Haryana, because the school's in Gurgaon. Sorry, I take names. If it's not Hudda, it will be Chauthala, it will be back. Just give us people whom we can vote for. This is it. They don't have a choice. It's not that they're not ready for change. They don't have a choice. Let me end on the note that today, in the legislatures, combined, in the electoral college that elects the president, the criminals of the legislatures, their combined strength is more than any national political party. And in my book and in an earlier talk, I merely said, in all seriousness, not in levity, this was before the recent president was elected, I said, should the criminals of the legislatures give a call for unity, criminals of the legislatures unite, they can have an arch criminal as the president. There's no doubt. This is the state that we are in. So the young people are ready, but we have to give them an option. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, General Sehgal.
Thank you. Oh,
This is for you.
sorry.
2012. Thank you so much.
I must shake hands with you.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
It looked like just another parent-teacher meeting in school. Parents walked in and out of classrooms, listening to nice words from teachers about the wonderful work their offspring were doing. And then I happened to notice in one classroom, a tree had been constructed in the middle of the room, and little luggage tags were hanging off the tree. Parents were walking up to the tree, turning a few of the luggage tags and reading them. I saw fathers and mothers turn to each other, go, tut, 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 and walk away swiftly. And the more times I saw this, the more curious I became. What was written on those tags? Come midday, the parents had all gone home. I went back to that room. The room was empty. The tree stood alone in the middle of the room. And I approached, and around the base of the pot, it said, "Our wish tree." And I started to read the tags. They'd been written by children of the most educated people in this country, by and large. And they said things like, I wish Mummy and Daddy didn't go to so many parties. I wish Mummy and Daddy wanted to be at home more often. I wish Daddy didn't just come home from office and shout. I wish Mummy had time to put her mobile phone down and see me. These were all true. And now I could understand perfectly why the children's parents did not want to receive these messages. When we decide to bring children into the world, does that fall into the category of our citizens' rights or our citizens' duties? There's been a fair amount of talk already this morning about rights and duties. There was also talk just now about microcosms acting as models for the bigger picture. I can't think of a better microcosm, a better starting place than our homes. On another occasion, sitting in my office, suddenly somebody burst in, on this occasion not somebody who was going to be receiving a bad response for bursting in, and called me urgently to the school medical room, where an 8-year-old child was lying on a bed, having been beaten badly by another child. After staying with the child until the parents came and took the child to hospital for a checkup, a teacher came and said, "We've got the boy who did it. He's in another room." So we went and sat with him, another 8-year-old child. And gently I asked him, "Why did you do this?" He said, "My father told me, if they hit you, hit them back until they don't get up again." I couldn't help thinking as I sat there, I would wish to say to that father, can you call yourself my fellow citizen in any kind of society that I want to be part of? If you are a parent who organizes a birthday party for 9-year-olds by taking the children to a 14-rated movie, so that my child thinks I'm a heel because I won't let him go, you're not my fellow citizen. If my child comes home with glazed eyes and doesn't sleep at night because he's been playing extremely violent, ugly computer games in your home with your child, I don't think you have the right to call yourself my fellow citizen. I'm an educator, and therefore sometimes if I challenge fellow parents, they get a bit sensitive. So sometimes I ask my spouse to do it, and every time she gets the answer, "Oh, we didn't know. Oh, how are you supposed to know these things? Oh, you know, it doesn't really matter because the children they're exposed to so much stuff anyway. So what does it matter? And how are we to know? How are we to know? I want to know the rating of a film. I can know it in 30 seconds on my phone. But parents, you couldn't even be bothered to spend 30 seconds on your phone to know whether you were doing something wrong, not only with your own child, but with mine as well. You want to talk about your citizenship? You want to talk about your rights? One parent even said, "Oh, do they have ratings?" Or, "Oh, the people who make those ratings, what nonsense is that anyway?" Those people happen to have more knowledge about child psychology and things than I do. And I think that's one of my major points, because I am talking about the educated in the population. But what really concerns me is that they throw their hands up with a, we're no worse than anyone else, and, oh, what can you do, and it's not really possible, and what power do we have? People talk a lot about the values being degenerated from the West. I come from Britain. When I'm in Britain, I'm thankful that if I leave my son in a room with a TV at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I can be sure he will see no nudity, he will hear no foul language, he will not see extreme and overt violence. And why? Very quickly. Because back in the 1970s, a lady by the name of Mary Whitehouse mobilized parents. Parents took to the streets. Parents campaigned in Trafalgar Square. They campaigned outside Parliament. And they said, we care about what our children are exposed to, and we believe you have a duty to respect our wishes, and we want our children to be able to grow up in a healthy environment. It was called the National Viewers and Listeners Association, and as a result of their work, legislation was passed in the country that still applies today that created something called the watershed, a 9 p.m. at night watershed. And there is a fundamental difference in what can be shown, what can be public, what can be broadcast, both before and after the watershed. A simple case of people power, because a group of citizens came together and said, we have a right to express our views and our wishes and to have them respected so that we can bring our children up in a healthy environment. I studied law many, many, many years ago. And in British law, which incidentally, of course, doesn't have the benefit of a written constitution, and I think we're often very envious of you for the fact that you do. But in the law of tort, I remember spending hours and hours and hours studying a very famous case called Rylands and Fletcher, and having endless discussions about how, if I own a guard dog, and the guard dog bites someone who breaks into my premises, do I have a legal responsibility? The case concerned as well having reservoirs or bodies of water on your land, and what is your responsibility if the water escapes from your land and does damage to someone else's, or knocks their home down, or kills a member of their family, or something like that. But as time's gone on, I found myself thinking it's kind of ironic to be so worried about people's responsibility and their duties when their dog goes crazy, or when water escapes from their premises, and yet we fail to hold them accountable when their children behave in ways which are inappropriate in the society. I live in Gurgaon, and I think any of us in Gurgaon, especially those who work in education, well, I was going to say can never forget, but I rather fear that many of my peers have forgotten. I would better say should never forget. I think it was 2006, if I'm not mistaken, when a boy involved in an angry confrontation with another boy took a gun to school and shot his classmate. The boy was 14 years of age. Everyone was in shock. A lot of the reactions were, that kind of thing happens in America. Doesn't happen here. And because it hasn't happened again, educators and parents smugly wash their hands and say, nothing to worry about. But if your child runs riot in a restaurant and spoils my dining experience, are you my fellow citizen? If your child bullies mine at school, are you my fellow citizen? If your child engages in stealing, cheating, and lying, are you my fellow citizen? If your child while spouting platitudes in environment lessons, litters and abuses the environment, are you my fellow citizen? And perhaps in the most extreme, if your child is the next Eve teaser, misogynist, Harry Anvi rapist, are you my fellow citizen? My mystification is about supposedly educated people who would not dream of going into a new project in their work without making themselves informed and knowledgeable. A friend who was here earlier talking about the t-shirts, the Nirvana t-shirts, I couldn't help noticing when she said, if it's my job, then I have to get my hands dirty. And what I want to say is, if parenting is our job, why won't we get our hands dirty? And why won't we invest the time to access information and material? But instead, too many are putting selfish short-term interests and their rights ahead of their duties. Because, unfortunately, too many are treating their parenting rather like they treat their driving, survival of the fittest, survival of he who grabs the most for himself right now, today, and that includes the 6 inches in front of your car that I can just see the chance of getting the wing of mine into. And it also includes encouraging and inciting children as well to go for everything they can get and damn the other man. That is not the way to build a society. That is not citizenship. And that is not, I believe, a responsible way for mature, educated people to behave in a democracy. And we need to get to work on this. Thank you. Now, clearly he was seeking to make a point, but what he was actually trying to say was that it may be that everybody else who has anything to do with the child has abdicated their responsibility for moral learning and moral guidance. But even as an educator, I'm going to say, please, please, I desperately don't want you to leave it to educators, because that's actually very dangerous. Because apart from anything else, educators have a fundamental problem, and that is that they tend to have a bad habit of thinking that if something is to be learned, then it must be taught. And that's why you get all this, I won't use one of Jerry's favorite words, I'll use a nice word, all this rot about life skills courses and values curriculum, as though somehow you can take all of the values and all of the morality that has been distilled through humanity up to today and put it in a neat little book and just tell the children, go mug it up, we'll have an exam. Even recently, CBSE have said they're going to put life skills questions into the examinations. I thought, wow, that'll do it. That's it cracked. We've got it cracked, that we don't need to worry anymore. It's all solved. So unfortunately, the educators are not the best people to put this in the hands of, because they're not necessarily thinking in the right way always.
Thank you, Mark. Let's have a question from Sneha.
My observation is, I'm a mother to 3 kids, and we encourage our children to perform well, primarily because I have seen most of my friends and people that I know, it's like a society that my child is scored 90%, 95%, and we are pressurizing the children so much more because it's our status which is at stake in the society. Now, I have 3 kids. My son is 13, and I spoke yesterday, and he's a kid with special needs. So, I have seen some people, and I'm also a trustee at SATU. We work with children with special needs, and I've seen people are hiding their kids if they don't perform well. They are not brought out in the society because we are ashamed of them. So, my take on this is, we are all born with certain set of skills and IQ pattern, and we have to be proud of what we are born with. And as parents, it's our duty to identify the skills and not push the child in different directions. Like my daughter, she taught in drama, and I very proudly told everybody, oh, she has scored the highest in drama, and she's getting an award for that. And they're like, oh, drama, oh, okay, okay. It's like, she's not.
There are those subjects that don't count. I remember my mother was heartbroken because I came top in RE, religious education. She said, why can't you top in a real subject? Yeah.
You know, I mean, and he understands that I'm telling that he's very smart, and he obviously in his body language he has the confidence to do his immigration himself and yourself.
Yeah.
I have told him that you can do it. So you know, the thing is, we shouldn't be thinking what the friends are going to say. If your child is not performing well despite trying, please bring him out and say yes, he tried. So what if he got those?
I think there's a whole lot of debates you can even get into about what defines doing well, what defines achieving. You know, the fact that the child was able to score 98% on a mugged up memory test is a test for little in the way of anything that will be of value to that child in their lifetime. So, you know, what do we mean by actually even achieving or being good? And these are exactly, I think, the kind of issues on which parents have got to start raising their voices. You know, we've had a long period where, for example, parents have actually, I think, played a part in, you know, especially amongst the more educated, in moves towards more holistic approaches to education. But what tends to happen is that there's an acceptance of those holistic, more sensitive, caring approaches in primary education. But somehow when the children cross the Rubicon into middle school, from class 5 to class 6, suddenly we're all supposed to get serious. And that means we're all supposed to go back to doing things exactly the way they were done 30, 40, 50 years ago, all sit in rows, all face the front, all write for hours, scribbling away, and all mug up for the tests to the point where, you know, eventually your average class 12 student today says, hey, look, I've worked out the way the game's played, and I'll play it. And that's what we have.
You know, this reminds me of John Lennon, and he was asked in school, this is what he said years later. He said, they asked me in school, what do you want to be when you grow up? He said, my answer was, I want to be happy.
Yeah.
And they told him, I don't think you understood the question. He said, no, I understood the question, I don't think you understood the answer, I want to be happy. Right? But happiness today is measured by fame, success, and money, not by the real thing of what you want to do. Yes, Darpan? Microphone for Darpan, please.
Hi, I'm Darpan Juga. I have a question because my uncle's son studied in the same school, Shriram. But the question I have is, I think there are these two clusters of school. And because I interact with children, and I think this is one thing which I always feel, that this one cluster, which could be inclusive of Shriram kind of school, that the kind of possible research, you know, or the possible people who exist there. And in the second cluster, that is the kind of cluster where the private schools and even maybe some public schools don't have that kind of facility. I think there should be some sort of mechanism where you can pass on some of these knowledge which you actually can pass on to these guys, and there should be some sort of a forum, because I think the kind of bridge.
You're kidding. Educators are absolutely phobic about sharing their knowledge and their expertise, especially in the private sector.
No, that is something I don't know. I think this is one thing which I feel very miserable sometimes, that this gap, because what he's learning there, and the gap is very wide. It's like, I think it's 5-6 years, you know. So I think because you know so much, you can impart that information, education to the teachers, to the faculty members, to the principals. And the second, I think not only as parents, I get very appalled. I'm not a father yet, but I get very appalled when I see that parents take the very young ones to McDonald's and the Pepsi, you know, and then make them drink something which they should not. And I kind of get very jittery, and I just get, so my friends, don't tell him, because he's not your son or she is not your son, right? You should not tell a parent. As an individual, I also feel that I have a responsibility to tell them that what you're doing. So I think that's again, it's not the parents only, even people like us who feel what they're doing incorrectly. You know, we should also go, and so that should combine find even people who are not trained, but they have a sensibility that these are the something they should and they should not. And I get into fight with parents that this is not the way. And babies will feed onto the Pepsi and the burgers like 1 year old, 2 years old. And I get appalled because McD has got a high stool. So where the kid can sit and actually consume all the junk possible. So anyway, I think the question for the first one was more of a question, the second was an observation.
I'd been visiting the campus on various occasions, but in all other respects, I was working somewhere else. And over the weekend, some of the classroom furniture had arrived and been put in the classrooms, which was being organized by somebody else. And when I got there and walked into one of the classrooms, I looked, and in one corner was a little wooden kind of a cutout of a bank. And there's like 2 little doors, and the children, it was for the little ones, and they could go through the doors and they could go inside, and there was a little teller's counter, and there was some little stools in there. They could sit in there and they could role play. And in the other corner was a similar one with Ronald McDonald's face shining out from the front. And I said, get that out of here within the next 2 hours. I do not want a single parent to see it here, because you will make a hypocrite of me with every child and every parent every time I talk against junk food, if that is sitting here. And they said, oh, but we thought the children would like. I said, get it out. I don't want it. To go back to your first question about the 2 types of schools, I disagree slightly. I think you're right that there are 2 types, but I would define the 2 types slightly differently. What we've actually got is the types that do old traditional education very badly, and the types that do old traditional education better. It's partly why I've moved, and why I've joined a new venture, a Swedish company, that focuses on personalized education, starting with every child where they are at the point where they are at that moment. Even in the best of schools, all over Delhi today, all over NCR, all over India, there are children walking into classrooms. If you're lucky, there are 20 walking into the room. There may be 40, there may be even 50 walking into the room. And during the time they're in that room, they will be treated as a homogeneous mass who are all at the same learning point at the same moment, even though we all know that's not true. Because one teacher will seek to deliver one set of knowledge to all of them, the 20, 30, 40, at the same time, in the same way, even though we know that's not what they need. People worry about the state of teachers in the country. People often ask me about, can you find quality teachers? I said, I can find a lot of people who have the potential to be quality teachers, but are ground down and demoralized by the fact that they're working in that situation, by the fact that their heart tells them at the end of every 40-minute lesson, I may have only met the needs of half the children in front of me during those 40 minutes. And yet I'm now going to walk to another classroom and do the same thing and do it over in the same way. This isn't working, and yet we perpetuate it. And again, these are the kinds of things that I think parents need to make themselves far more informed. I was a little surprised a few months ago. Dr. Howard Gardner from Harvard University, from the Harvard School of Education, was here in India. And he traveled around India. When he was in Delhi and NCR, he was here for 4 days. I'll confess, I begged, stole, and borrowed tickets to make sure I got to interact with Dr. Gardner on all 4 days. But I marvel when I hear of teachers who sit down in workshops, and after 10 minutes, they send their principal a message, why am I here? I've done multiple intelligences before. As though somehow it was just a simple little body of knowledge that they had to absorb once and that was it. But the reality is they haven't learned it, because if they had, something would have changed in their classrooms and in the way they behave and interact with children. Because Gardner's material is all about the fact of acknowledging that children come from different places at different times in different ways. And for the lady who was talking about her autistic child, I have a nephew who has Asperger's. And I tell you, on some of the intelligences, when you look at the Howard Gardner scales, he is just off the scale so far ahead of me that I'm in adoration of him. Yes, there may be intelligences on which he lacks, but we've got to acknowledge each human being where they are and where they're starting from.
Yes, one last question from Aditya, and just keep it brief,
I have more of an observation to make, so I'll quickly make it. I feel that as parents, everyone has to act more responsible themselves, because I completely agree with you, Mark, that values cannot be taught to children. Children observe their parents' behavior. So if you're a parent and you litter, you get drunk at parties and you come home squashed, you abuse in front of your children. So you do not lose the right to tell your children what's correct and what's incorrect. I think you have to check your own behavior and become more responsible and a conscious citizen when you become a parent. I think that's everyone has to keep in mind.
Just one last quick thought in relation to that. In discussions and debates on morality, in philosophical debates, there is a question that is sometimes posed to people, and it's about, do you do the right thing when nobody's watching? And I guess, just to conclude on this discussion about parenting, I would give a variation on the question. Do you do the right thing when the only person watching is your child? And that includes all of the things you talked about, the littering, the going through the red light on the traffic lights. You know? I had some children in my class one day, they laughed. Sorry, they were in my car one day. I was taking them to a party. And we come up to a crossroads. There isn't another car in sight. There isn't another vehicle in sight. And the light is red, and I stopped. And one of the kids in the back went, "Why have you stopped? Uncle, why have you stopped? Nobody's there." I said, "The light's red." "Yeah, but why have you stopped?"
Thank you, Mark. One last
Thank you.
question from Aditya.
Hi.
I work a little bit with kids. We organize quiz shows. A lot of people. So I'm sure you've been asked this question before, but you're now working with a Swedish school, right? A program which deals with individual children. My children go to a school called Irambika. It's very few kids. Again, they're like 14 or 17 children in one room. And there the student-teacher ratio is roughly 1:6 all the way up. And but that ends up being a very, very small amount of parents who actually ascribe to that method of education. I'm not going to call it teaching because it goes against the basic principle. But when there are so many kids outside who, just the sheer pressure of numbers that have to be accommodated in an education system or a learning system, then it's not, unless everyone ascribes to the fact that each one teach one, which is all very idealistic, what is a realistic view of creating a system whereby children get a proper education? And I don't mean, like you said, they're not just not literate. They need to absorb values, they need to be able to figure out values for themselves and the right values, the ones we want to perpetuate.
Yeah.
So is there a system that will suit this huge mass of humanity that we call the Indian population?
Okay. This organization, the Swedish organization, was founded by someone from the PR industry in Sweden by the name of Page Emilsson. He was over here in India about 3 weeks ago. He was a panelist on the World Economic Forum summit that was taking place at the Lila Kempinski on the session that was talking about education for all. And whilst our starting point in terms of what we're doing right now is a flagship school, he said, "I'm not interested in educating the 5%, I'm interested in educating the 95%. And that was part of the discussion that he and I had. And so this question about how you reach far more students with these kind of innovative methods is very much something which is continually on my mind in terms of what we're working on. We're already, even before we opened the first school in April, we're already working on how we come up with alternative models where we can take it to second-line towns and cities at lower price points and all that sort of thing. I think one of the answers is, and you touched on it, you talked about this issue of the number of students to the number of teachers. And the thing is that, I mean, to a lot of people, that whole thing about teacher-student ratio has become one of the big sort of touchstones for measuring whether a school is good or not good. But actually, that all comes from a paradigm of control. Because it's actually about saying, how many children realistically can one adult control at a time? But Page, I think, came at things very differently. When he opened the first of the schools in 2000 in Sweden, and there are now 37 of them in Sweden, 3 in UK, 1 in New York, and now there's going to be the first one in India. Because what he said was, you only need to control the children if you're forcing them to do unnatural things in unnatural ways. If actually, at a particular moment in time, the child is doing what they chose to do, in the way they chose to do it, with whom they chose to do it with, you won't have discipline issues, and you don't need to get so hung up on teacher-student ratio. We will have teachers on a ratio. First year, it'll be a little higher, but once we get established, it'll be 20-1. I've visited a number of the schools in Sweden, and you sit with the principal and you say, okay, how do you handle discipline issues? He says, I don't have any. And as well, you know, people have, I think quite rightly, applauded Mirambika for the great work that Mirambika has been doing here in Delhi for a number of years. But who has the courage to take Mirambika's methodologies all the way up to middle and senior school? They say, no, this is nice for junior. But I think that tricks the children. You trick them into somehow believing that learning is fun, and it's about exploring your own creativity and your own curiosity, and then suddenly, slam. Ha, we fooled you. Now we're back to the old system, and everything will look like it did 30 years ago again.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And it was a brilliant session.
Thanks,
Please feel free to catch up with Mark over lunch. We break for lunch now. You showed excellent character coming back from tea on time. Please come back from lunch on time. I'm going to give you 45 minutes, so please be back at 2:15 sharp. Eat less, chew more. Yeah, that's Swedish wisdom. We're going to have a philanthropist from the UK, person of Indian origin, Vijay Mehta, speaking immediately after lunch. After which we have Swaroop Sampal, the actor and the star from Yejo has entered this evening, who will speak about her philanthropic work. So please do come back at 2:15. And thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.